In the days before Ireland found a place within European film culture, genuinely innovative and serious Irish filmmakers were few and far between. And it's a great honour this evening to welcome one such figure, George Morrison, to the Queen's Film Theatre here at Queen's University Belfast, and to enjoy the screening of his remarkable 1961 film, Saoirse. The title of this event and this celebration of George's work is An Irish Camera. And for many of us with a particular interest in Irish filmmaking, George Morrison's name is synonymous with films such as Misha Era, Saoirse and Rebellion, as well as works such as Those Stones Remain, 2000 Miles of Pearl, and more recently Dublin Day, a documentary on the Dublin of James Joyce's life and times, which we could have screened 2 days ago on Bloomsday. We've been prescient enough. It's important to point out at the onset, however, that there's more to George Morrison's career than his documentary filmmaking. He has made over 20 films, and his prodigious photographic output over the years, his writings, archival, educational and other cultural work is testament to his sustained contribution to modern Irish life and to how we see, remember and imagine ourselves and our histories. Saoirse is generally assumed to be a sequel to Misha Era, both films tracing the period from 1916 to 1922, the Easter Rising, the War of Independence, the Civil War. The films are particularly noteworthy for the use of found footage and how George Morrison configured and assembled such a diverse archive of images and sequences into compelling documentary treatments. The best film archive is the cinema itself, and Saoirse does not disappoint in that regard. Comprising documents, photographs, drawings and cartoons, it both consolidates the pioneering work of early Soviet filmmakers such as Esra Shub, while anticipating the expressive methods of figures such as Santiago Alvarez, the great Cuban filmmaker. No introduction to Saoirse and Misha Era can overlook the contribution of Sean O'Riordan and George Morrison's success in inspiring and cajoling O'Riordan into producing one of the most memorable scores in the history of documentary film. O'Riordan's score, like itself, a kind of musical translation of found footage, interweaves traditional idioms with orchestral arrangements, and like the film itself, consolidates a past and anticipates what was to come in terms of traditional Irish music in the 1960s and after. Another important context to bear in mind when watching this film, I think, is the role of Gail Lynn in the production and distribution of both Saoirse and Misha Era. Despite its critics, Gail Lynn had quite a progressive and modern social vision that was alert to both the dangers of ghettoising the Irish language and the need to ensure it had some secular space to develop, that the fate of the language wouldn't be contingent on the fortunes of an excessively ethnocentric political culture dominated by the intimacy between church and state. Gail Lynn then embraced film and documentary, cinema verite, while also refusing to allow subtitle prints of the film in any language for many years, which is hopefully something George might talk about after the screening. These films are sites of, Misha Era and Saoirse, are sites of contestation, competition. They are very important in terms of understanding an Ireland that was trying to mature and to develop into a self-sufficient and independent nation. They in a sense stage these conflicts between past and future, modernity and tradition, innovation and preservation. Saoirse has a question mark in its title. It does not pretend to be an answer or to close history. It is a film about the past, but that past is still very much part of our present, part of the history of today. The film's relevance to us now as a documentary then is both formal and contextual. It is a treasure trove of images, music and language, but Saoirse is also a film that remains open to many questions. thank you again, George, for coming to Belfast and for being with us at the screening of Saoirse. And I just want to, pardon? Sorry, just want to ask a couple of questions and then open to the floor, if that's okay.
Yes, I may say that your screening now has given me such pleasure.
Right.
Because I regard Saoirse and Saoirse as of equal importance, and one can't be understood without the other.
When people discuss the cinema of Ireland, quite often the emphasis is on Ireland rather than cinema as such. So
Yes.
it's how films illustrate and represent history and that sort of thing. One of the things that interests me about your work is that I think it's quite influenced by other filmmaking styles and traditions and culture.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just wondered if you could talk a bit about that, because I think
Yes.
that's something in the critical
yes.
treatment of your work that's
I
rarely
was-
acknowledged.
When I had assembled the actuality material, I began the catalogue raisonné of Irish actuality material in 1952. And when I had assembled sufficiently, it was obvious to me that the crude style, that the kind of treatment it should receive was more nearly resembling the work of Eisenstein or the Pudovkin, and this was reflected in my treatment. And it was a decision which I made at an early stage, and it was quite consistent.
Yeah. There was a lot of documentaries that were publicly funded coming out of England in the 1930s and 40s through the General Post Office. And were you influenced by those kind of documentaries? Sort of
Not
Morrison
particularly.
and all that,
I was more influenced by the Soviets.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Did you feel that your kind of approach to filmmaking was political in the way that their films
I'm
were?
sorry?
Did you feel that your method was political in that sense, that it was a kind of dialectical and ideological kind of project, or was it the
Yes,
when we
it
see
was.
montage?
It has its form, as you will notice, definitely structured along those lines.
Okay. Just one other question before we open it up to others. The subtitling. One of the issues that's comes up in discussions about Saoirse and Saoirse is this the fact that Gail Lynn refused to subtitle the films for a long time.
Oh.
Were you happy with
The less said
that?
about that, the better.
Okay. Well, has anyone any questions? That's George.
Hello, my name is Crew Rolihan. I'm from the Cultural, and we'll be screening Saoirse tomorrow after lunch. Just to point that out.
Thank you very much.
But I wanted to ask you, how did you work with Sean O'Riordan?
Oh, marvelously. Could anybody doubt that?
No.
Using the information that we worked very closely together, as close as that, perfectly. And the result, you see.
Any other? Questions? Yeah, maybe if I could just ask you about the Sean O'Riordan collaboration. Did he score the music to the images, or how did that work?
He scored the music to the images.
Yeah.
And brilliant,
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Yeah.
He couldn't be faulted.
Yes. And did you find that he was?
I may say that I spent the music to this film I regarded as most important, and the music to Saoirse I regarded as most important. That is the reason there are two different styles. One is hopeful,
Yes.
with Saoirse. The other is fragmented, and the harpsichord which he played himself emphasizes that, particularly at the end of the film.
Right. Yeah.
Disintegration, disintegration, disintegration.
So the that sense.
Disintegration until the worst of social disasters, which is civil war.
Yes. Yeah. When the film was released in 1961, I mean, what was your sense of how that contemporary Ireland was dealing with the legacy of the Civil War?
I'm not sure that I understand your question.
When the film was first released in 1961,
Yes.
okay, so it was a kind of it was to a generation, a post-Civil War generation.
Yes.
How did they receive it? I mean, Saoirse, that is.
They were disappointed that I hadn't maintained the heroic and theme. But how can you make a film about the Tan War and the Civil War and be heroic?
Yeah.
There's no way you can do it.
So, in a sense, the tragic dimension to Saoirse is what is maintained throughout that mood.
I'm sorry?
A tragic mood is maintained.
Oh,
throughout,
yes.
Yeah.
That is the reason I use those long fade-outs and fade-ins
Yes.
in order to emphasize the degeneration, the fragmentation that took place.
Okay. Anyone want to ask any other questions? Yes, sorry.
I don't think I need a microphone. Okay, wondering.
I wonder, could you speak a little louder, please?
Hello. I was just
Thank
wondering-
you.
Hi, George. I was wondering where the actual material, most of it, came from. Actually, who was it? People's collections, or was it state broadcasters, or where?
No. The major portions of it came from all three national collections, commercial collections, and private collections. Almost equally.
Did you find when in some of the photographs where you close in on particular images and the still photographs, you were quite expressive and poetic in the way that you
Yes.
used them?
I endeavored to do so, and to the episode, like the swans,
Yes.
are intended to convey a relaxation, and in my opinion they do so.
Mm. I was just going to ask one other point about the photographic quality of the squid as sort of certainly those images, the sequences where you intercut to the water and the river and that.
Yes.
That's okay. I mean, your own career as a photographer, and I mean,
I'm sorry?
in terms of your own career as a photographer and that sort of
Yes,
thing.
yes.
Was that a big Was it a major influence? Or?
Oh, most certainly. I did studies of the principal sculptures, photographic studies, before deciding how I wanted to use them.
Very good. Yeah. Any final questions? Sir, just at the back there. Yeah.
Thank you for showing the film today. I thought it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I thought it was very evocative. I thought it was also very, very sad.
Ah, yes.
The film was made in 1961 when I think Eamon de Valera was the Irish president.
Yes.
Do you think the film, I want to ask two questions actually, do you think the film treats both the Free Staters and the Republicans equally? And secondly, is given what happened subsequently, given our history afterwards, is there anything about the film you would have changed?
No, there isn't. I think that the you must remember, I'm primarily a Republican, and consequently, I changed nothing.
Any other questions? Well, I think it just remains for me, George, to thank you again. It's been a wonderful evening, and it's a great screening, and I think everyone here enjoyed it. And maybe give you a round of applause, please.
I'd like to thank you all very much for coming, and it's given me such a pleasure to be here.